Anakin Skywalker stands over Padme's unconscious body on Mustafar. His yellow Sith eyes burn with rage. His hands still tingle from force choking the woman he loves. And then he feels it. A presence, approaching fast. Obi-Wan Kenobi, his former master, has found him. In our timeline, Anakin stayed and fought. He lost his limbs, he burned. He became the cyborg we all know. But what if he didn't? What if, in that critical moment, Anakin made a different choice? What if he ran? This one decision changes everything. No duel, no burns. No suit. Anakin Skywalker remains at full power. The most dangerous Force user in the galaxy stays intact. And the Empire gets a Darth Vader unlike anything we've ever seen. But here's what nobody expected. Without the pain of the suit, without the physical prison that kept him weak and dependent, this version of Vader retains something the cyborg lost: his humanity. And that makes him far more unpredictable, far more dangerous, and ultimately far more capable of redemption. Let me show you how one moment of fear or tactical brilliance rewrites the entire Star Wars saga. Mustafar burns. The lava planet's rivers of molten rock cast an ominous glow across the Separatist stronghold. Anakin has just slaughtered the Separatist Council on Palpatine's orders. The facility is silent except for the hiss of cooling bodies. He's done the unthinkable: attacked the Jedi Temple, killed younglings, choked Padme. The dark side churns within him like the lava flows outside. As Padme lies unconscious on the landing platform, Anakin stands over her, his yellow Sith eyes burning with anguish and rage. But then something shifts. Through the Force, he senses a presence, a familiar presence approaching rapidly. Obi-Wan Kenobi, his former master, his brother, has found him. In the original timeline, Anakin would confront Obi-Wan, leading to their legendary duel. But in this timeline, something different happens. Perhaps it's a flicker of fear. Perhaps it's tactical thinking breaking through his emotional turmoil. Or perhaps it's the dark side itself guiding him toward a different path. Whatever the reason, Anakin makes a choice that will echo through the decades to come. He runs. Anakin doesn't wait to see Obi-Wan emerge from Padme's ship. He doesn't issue challenges or proclamations about his new power. Instead, he reaches out with the Force, sensing the layout of the facility, finding another ship, a Separatist vessel that's still functional. His training as both a Jedi and now as Palpatine's apprentice has taught him to survive, to be strategic. And right now, strategy demands escape. He sprints through the facility, his black robes whipping behind him, leaping over debris and bodies. Behind him, he can feel Obi-Wan discovering Padme, checking her for injuries. That buys him precious seconds. Anakin reaches a hangar bay where a modified Separatist cruiser sits waiting. He boards it quickly, his mechanical hand flying over the controls with the skill of the best pilot in the galaxy. The engines roar to life just as he senses Obi-Wan's presence getting closer, searching through the facility. But it's too late. The ship lifts off, blasting through the hangar doors and into the sulfurous atmosphere of Mustafar. Obi-Wan emerges onto a platform just in time to see the ship disappearing into the ash clouds. He's left standing there with an unconscious Padme, no Anakin to confront, no duel to finish what his fallen apprentice started. Now let's consider where Anakin goes. He's in a state of complete emotional chaos. He's committed atrocities, he's betrayed everything he once stood for, and he's hurt the one person he was trying to save. But he's also powerful, more powerful than he's ever been, with the dark side flowing through him without the limitations the Jedi imposed. His first instinct might be to return to Coruscant, to Palpatine, to his new master who promised him the power to save Padme. But would he? Anakin is impulsive, yes, but he's also just witnessed what his new path has cost him. The look on Padme's face before he choked her, the horror in her eyes, that image burns in his mind. Perhaps instead, Anakin goes into hiding. The galaxy is vast, and he knows systems the Republic barely charted during the Clone Wars. He could disappear into the Outer Rim, to worlds like Tatooine where he grew up, where people don't ask questions and the Empire's reach would take time to extend. Or perhaps he goes somewhere completely unexpected, to Dagobah, to Elam, to one of the forgotten Jedi worlds where he might wrestle with what he's become. The dark side is powerful, but Anakin was the chosen one, and even consumed by darkness, there might be a part of him that recoils from what he's done. But let's consider the most likely scenario. Anakin's connection to Palpatine is strong. The Emperor has spent years grooming him, manipulating him, feeding his fears and desires. Even in his confusion and anguish, Anakin would likely return to the one person who claimed to have all the answers. So Anakin sets coordinates for Coruscant for the Imperial Palace, where Palpatine waits. The journey gives him time to think, to feel the full weight of his actions. Without the immediate confrontation with Obi-Wan, without the physical trauma of being burned alive, Anakin's psychological state is different. He's not fighting for his life. He's sitting alone in a ship, replaying every terrible choice he made over the past hours. When Anakin's ship lands at the Imperial Palace, Palpatine is there to meet him. But the Emperor's reaction is complex. In the original timeline, Palpatine found his new apprentice burned, broken, and completely dependent on him for survival. Darth Vader's suit became both a life support system and a symbol of his servitude. But now Anakin arrives whole, his body intact, his power at its absolute peak. This changes the dynamic between master and apprentice dramatically. Palpatine is many things, but he's not foolish. He recognizes that a fully powered Anakin Skywalker is potentially more dangerous to him than the cyborg Vader ever was. Palpatine greets Anakin with false warmth and concern. He asks about Mustafar, about the Separatist Council, carefully gauging his new apprentice's mental state. Anakin reports his success, but his voice is hollow. He asks about Padme, desperately needing to know if she's alive, if the visions of her death have been prevented. But Palpatine doesn't have that answer yet. Obi-Wan hasn't returned with Padme to medical facilities on Polis Massa or elsewhere. The Emperor only knows that Anakin escaped before confronting his former master. This uncertainty gnaws at Anakin. Everything he did was supposed to save Padme, but he doesn't know if she even survived his attack on her. Palpatine, ever the manipulator, uses this uncertainty to his advantage. He tells Anakin that Obi-Wan has taken Padme, that the Jedi are likely hiding her, possibly using her as bait to draw Anakin out. He fans the flames of Anakin's paranoia and anger, directing them toward the remaining Jedi, rather than allowing his apprentice to dwell on his own actions. The Emperor needs Anakin focused, needs him to continue down the dark path without hesitation or second thoughts. But there's a calculation happening in Palpatine's mind. How does he ensure that this powerful apprentice remains loyal? How does he prevent Anakin from eventually challenging him for control of the Empire? In the original timeline, the answer was the suit. Vader's armor limited his potential, made him weaker than he could have been, ensured that he could never truly overthrow Palpatine. But now that safety measure doesn't exist. Anakin is the chosen one, the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, and he's completely intact. Palpatine begins to formulate plans, considering ways to control his apprentice through psychological means rather than physical limitations. He might accelerate Anakin's training in the dark side, pushing him deeper into corruption, making him more dependent on Sith teachings and less likely to question his master's authority. Or perhaps he begins to subtly undermine Anakin's confidence, planting seeds of doubt about his abilities, his choices, his worthiness. But let's shift our focus to what's happening on Mustafar. Obi-Wan Kenobi stands over Padme's unconscious form, his heart breaking. He can feel through the Force that she's injured but alive. The medical readouts would show elevated stress levels, signs of Force trauma to her throat, but critically, she hasn't suffered the severe injuries that would lead to complications during childbirth. Obi-Wan gently lifts Padme and carries her back to her ship. As he tends to her, he grapples with the reality that Anakin has fallen completely to the dark side, but has escaped. There was no confrontation, no chance to try to bring his brother back to the light, no closure to their relationship. Obi-Wan makes a decision. He needs to get Padme to safety and medical attention immediately. He pilots her ship away from Mustafar, heading toward the hidden medical facility on Polis Massa, where Bail Organa is coordinating with other Jedi survivors. During the journey, Padme regains consciousness. She's weak, disoriented, and devastated. The man she loved, the man she married, attacked her. She felt his rage, his yellow eyes burning with hatred. But she's also pregnant, and the medical droids on the ship confirm that her babies are alive. Yes, babies. Twins. The revelation is overwhelming, a spark of hope in the darkness consuming her. When they arrive at Polis Massa, Yoda and Bail Organa are there. The diminished Jedi Order is scrambling to survive Palpatine's purge, and the news that Anakin has turned but escaped creates new concerns. Where is Darth Vader? What is he planning? Is he hunting the remaining Jedi? These questions hang heavy over the survivors. Padme receives proper medical care. Over the following weeks, several crucial events unfold differently. First, Padme gives birth to Luke and Leia, but she survives. The twins are healthy, and their mother, though heartbroken and traumatized, is there for them. This single change ripples forward through everything that follows. The discussion about separating the twins still happens. Yoda and Obi-Wan believe that hiding them from Vader and the Emperor is crucial, that splitting them up provides the best chance of keeping them safe. But Padme is alive to voice her opinion, and she's not willing to give up both of her children. The compromise they reach is different from the original plan. They agree to hide one twin, likely Luke, sending him to Tatooine with Owen and Beru Lars as planned. Anakin's stepfamily will raise him in obscurity on a backwater desert planet where the Empire has little presence. But Leia stays with Padme. Bail Organa offers them sanctuary on Alderaan, but not as the adopted princess. Instead, Padme and Leia live quietly, in hiding under assumed identities. Perhaps they stay in one of Alderaan's remote provinces, or perhaps they move between safe houses in the Outer Rim. The point is that Leia grows up knowing her mother, hearing stories about her father before he fell, understanding her heritage in ways the original Leia never did. This dramatically changes Leia's development. In the original timeline, she was raised as Princess Leia Organa, groomed for leadership and diplomacy from birth. She never knew her real mother beyond Obi-Wan's brief description of her as beautiful and kind. But in this timeline, Leia grows up with Padme, learning from her mother's experiences as a queen and senator, understanding the complexities of politics and rebellion from someone who lived them. Padme, for her part, channels her grief and anger into action. She becomes a founding member of the Rebel Alliance, using her connections and expertise to build the resistance against Palpatine's empire. And Leia, even as a child, is part of that world. Meanwhile, Luke grows up on Tatooine as in the original timeline. Owen and Beru tell him his father was a navigator on a spice freighter, keeping him away from anything connected to the Jedi or the Force. Obi-Wan watches over him from a distance, living as a hermit in the Dune Sea. But there's a key difference. Obi-Wan never fought Anakin on Mustafar. He never cut off his limbs and left him to burn. Their last true confrontation was when Obi-Wan emerged from Padme's ship and Anakin was already gone. This leaves Obi-Wan with a different kind of burden. Instead of the guilt of having nearly killed his brother, he carries the weight of not having tried to save him, of letting him escape without even attempting to bring him back to the light. Now let's examine what's happening with Anakin during these early years of the Empire. Darth Vader without the suit is a different kind of enforcer for Palpatine. He's faster, stronger, more agile than his cyborg counterpart ever was. He can still use Force lightning, something the suit's electrical systems would have made impossible in the original timeline. His connection to the Force is unimpeded by machinery and constant pain. In many ways, this Vader is the most terrifying version imaginable, a Dark Lord of the Sith at the absolute height of his powers. He becomes the Emperor's right hand, hunting down surviving Jedi with ruthless efficiency. But there are complications in Vader's relationship with his master. Palpatine continually manipulates him, but it's harder to control someone who isn't dependent on you for their next breath. Vader questions orders more frequently. He pushes back against strategies he disagrees with. The Emperor has to be more careful, more subtle in his manipulation. And always, there's the question of Padme. Vader doesn't know if she's alive or dead. He searched for her obsessively, but the Rebel Alliance has hidden her well. This uncertainty keeps him in a state of constant turmoil, which Palpatine exploits, but it also makes him unpredictable. The Jedi Purge proceeds much as it did in the original timeline, but with a fully powered Vader leading the charge, it's even more devastating. Jedi who might have escaped the cyborg Vader fall to this faster, more powerful version. He cuts through them like wheat before a scythe. Obi-Wan, hearing reports of Vader's actions, recognizes his former apprentice's fighting style and feels each death as a personal failure. He failed to stop Anakin on Mustafar. He failed to save him. And now, Anakin is killing their former comrades with even greater efficiency than the tragic version we knew. But here's where things get interesting. Without the constant pain of his injuries and suit, without the physical limitations that kept cyborg Vader in a state of perpetual suffering, this version of Anakin retains more of his humanity. The dark side has consumed him, yes, but he's not the single-minded engine of destruction that was molded by decades of agony. He still dreams. He still remembers. And sometimes, in quiet moments between atrocities, he wonders if there might have been another way. These moments are rare, quickly suppressed by his training and Palpatine's influence, but they exist. They're seeds that, given the right circumstances, might grow into something more. Years pass. Luke grows into a restless teenager on Tatooine, dreaming of adventure among the stars, knowing nothing of his true heritage. Leia, trained by her mother and surrounded by rebel leadership, becomes a formidable strategist and leader despite her youth. She knows she's Force-sensitive. Padme has told her everything about the Jedi, about her father's fall, about the danger they're all in. Leia has chosen not to pursue Jedi training, fearing it might lead her down her father's path, but she uses her abilities subtly, enhancing her instincts and perception in ways that make her invaluable to the rebellion. The Rebel Alliance grows more quickly in this timeline. Padme's survival and continued leadership provides a unifying figure for the Resistance. She's a former queen and senator who stood against tyranny from the beginning. Her presence lends legitimacy and inspiration to the cause. She works closely with Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and other founders to build the Alliance's structure, and she does it all while keeping Leia safe and preparing her daughter for the role she'll eventually play in liberating the galaxy. Then comes the Death Star. Palpatine's ultimate weapon is constructed in secret, just as in the original timeline. The Emperor believes that fear will keep the systems in line, that a weapon capable of destroying planets will make resistance impossible. But he underestimates the rebellion's determination, especially with Padme Amidala helping to lead them. The plans to the Death Star are stolen, but the circumstances are different. In the original timeline, Leia was captured with the plans and rescued by Luke, leading to their famous meeting. But in this timeline, Padme and Leia work together on the mission to obtain those plans. Let's say that Padme, now older but still sharp and capable, leads a cell that acquires the Death Star plans. Perhaps she's there on Scarif, or perhaps she receives them from Rogue One's sacrifice as in the original timeline. Either way, the plans need to be delivered to the Rebel base, and that's when disaster strikes. The Empire intercepts their ship. Vader boards it personally, cutting through Rebel soldiers with terrifying efficiency. And then, after all these years, he comes face to face with Padme. Imagine that moment. Vader, who has searched for her obsessively, who never knew for certain if she survived Mustafar, suddenly senses a familiar presence. He follows it to a corridor where Padme stands, older now, her face lined with the stress of years in hiding and rebellion, but unmistakably her. Time seems to stop. All his power, all his dark side training, all his certainty crashes against the reality of seeing her alive. The yellow has never completely left his eyes, but for a moment they flicker, something human showing through the monster he's become. Padme looks at him with a complex mixture of emotions. Fear, yes, but also sadness, disappointment, and something that might be lingering love for the man he once was. She doesn't run. She stands her ground and speaks to him. She calls him Anakin, not Vader. She tells him that he destroyed everything they built together, that he betrayed everything they believed in, that he chose power over love. Her words cut deeper than any lightsaber could. Vader feels his carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. This is his wife, the woman he fell to the dark side to save, and she's looking at him with such profound sorrow. But the moment can't last. Other rebels are fighting, dying to buy time for the Death Star plans to escape. Leia, who has been coordinating the defense from another part of the ship, realizes her mother is in danger. She moves toward Vader's location, determined to help Padme escape. When Leia arrives, Vader senses something in her, a presence in the Force that's achingly familiar. He doesn't immediately understand what he's feeling, but there's a connection there, something that pulls at him in ways he can't explain. He sees the physical resemblance to Padme in Leia's features, and a terrible suspicion begins to form. Before Vader can act on this suspicion, before he can demand answers, a massive explosion rocks the ship. Rebel engineers have sabotaged critical systems, creating a distraction for escape. In the chaos, Padme and Leia manage to escape in a pod, taking the Death Star plans with them. Vader is left standing amid the wreckage, his mind reeling from what just happened. Padme is alive. There was a girl with her, strong in the Force, who looked like Padme. Could it be? Could she have been pregnant? Could he have a child? In this timeline, Luke's journey to the rebellion happens differently. Perhaps Obi-Wan is forced to reveal his identity when Imperial forces searching for Padme and Leia get too close to Tatooine. Perhaps Luke, dreaming of adventure, joins the Imperial Academy only to defect when he learns the truth about the Empire's atrocities. However it happens, Luke finds his way to the rebellion, and there he meets his mother and sister for the first time. The reunion is emotional beyond words. Padme sees her son now grown, with Anakin's features and spirit. Leia meets her twin brother, the sibling she knew existed but never met. And Luke discovers his entire understanding of his family was a lie. But he finally has the answers he's always craved, Obi-Wan, who accompanies Luke to the rebellion or is already there as an advisor, begins training both twins in the Force. It's rushed. Desperate training and preparation for the battle to come. But both Luke and Leia show remarkable aptitude. They're Anakin's children, after all, inheritors of his raw power. Obi-Wan teaches them to trust the Force, to open themselves to its guidance. He tells them about their father, about the good man he was before his fall, and about the monster he became. Leia, who grew up knowing this story, listens with grim understanding. Luke, who is hearing it for the first time, struggles to process that his father is Darth Vader, the Emperor's enforcer, responsible for countless deaths. The Battle of Yavin unfolds with higher stakes than in the original timeline. The Rebel fleet engages the Death Star's defenses while starfighters make their attack runs on the thermal exhaust port. The Empire's response is overwhelming. TIE fighters swarm the Rebel ships, picking them off one by one. And then Vader arrives in his personal fighter, even more deadly in this timeline because he's not limited by his suit's restrictions. He can move faster, react quicker, his connection to the Force is stronger. He begins decimating the Rebel pilots with frightening efficiency. Luke is in the final trench run, guided by Obi-Wan's voice, trusting the Force as he's been taught. He switches off his targeting computer, relying on instinct and the Force to guide his shot. Vader is on his tail, locked on, ready to fire and end this Rebel pilot who showed surprising skill. But then something happens. Through the Force, Vader feels a connection to the pilot he's pursuing. It's powerful, undeniable. The same kind of connection he felt when he encountered that girl on the ship with Padme. This pilot is strong in the Force, and there's something familiar about his presence. Something that resonates with Vader's own Force signature. In that split second of recognition, Vader hesitates. He doesn't fire. And in that moment, another ship appears. Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, blasting Vader's wingman and forcing the Dark Lord to break off his attack. Luke fires his proton torpedoes, trusting the Force, and they streak true, disappearing into the exhaust port. Vader, spinning from Han's attack, realizes with horror what's about to happen. He pushes his ship to maximum speed, fleeing from the Death Star. Behind him, the space station begins its chain reaction. The Death Star explodes in a massive fireball, a symbol of Imperial might destroyed by the rebellion. The rebels celebrate their impossible victory, but Vader survives. He lands at an Imperial facility, disembarks from his fighter, and stands staring at the space where the Death Star used to be. His mind is consumed with questions. The pilot he almost killed was his son. He's certain of it now. The connection through the Force was unmistakable. Padme was pregnant when he attacked her on Mustafar. She survived and gave birth. He has a son, and possibly a daughter if the girl on the ship was also his child. The revelation breaks through years of dark side conditioning. Anakin Skywalker, buried under layers of rage and suffering, stirs within Darth Vader. Palpatine summons Vader to Coruscant immediately after the Death Star's destruction. The Emperor is furious about the loss of his ultimate weapon, but he's even more concerned about Vader's state of mind. He can sense the turmoil in his apprentice, the dangerous questions forming. Palpatine decides the time has come to reveal what he's always known. Yes, Vader's children survived. Yes, they're strong in the Force. And yes, they must either be turned to the dark side or destroyed. The Emperor frames it as an opportunity. Together, they will find Vader's children, and Vader will help turn them, creating a new generation of Sith to rule the galaxy. But something is different in Vader now. The complete certainty that drove him for years is cracked. He thought Padme was dead, that his children died with her, that everything he did to save her was meaningless. But they're alive. His family survived, and the son he almost killed was fighting for freedom against tyranny, fighting for the ideals that Padme believed in, that Anakin once believed in. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader allows himself to truly question what he's become. He served the Empire faithfully, killed thousands, helped subjugate the galaxy, all while believing he'd destroyed everything he loved. But it was all based on a lie. The hunt for Luke and Leia begins in earnest. Palpatine assigns Vader to lead the search, providing him with unlimited resources and authority. Imperial intelligence works to identify the pilot who destroyed the Death Star. It doesn't take long. Luke Skywalker, raised on Tatooine by Owen and Beru Lars, stepbrother to Anakin Skywalker. The confirmation sends shockwaves through Vader. His son was right there, on the planet he himself came from, watched over by family. And he never knew. The rebels, meanwhile, are relocating to Hoth, establishing Echo Base in the frozen wastes where they hope to remain hidden while rebuilding their forces after Yavin. During this time, Padme, Luke, and Leia are together for the first time as a family, but it's strained by the circumstances. Padme is overwhelmed with emotion, having both of her children with her finally, but also terrified of what Vader's discovery means. Luke is struggling with his identity, torn between the heroic image of the father Obi-Wan described and the reality of Darth Vader. Leia, who has known about her father longer, tries to help Luke understand, but she has her own complicated feelings about Anakin Skywalker. She's spent her whole life knowing that her father became a monster, and now that monster is hunting them specifically, Obi-Wan continues training the twins, pushing them harder now that Vader knows about them. He teaches them advanced lightsaber techniques, deeper force abilities, trying to prepare them for the inevitable confrontation. Both Luke and Leia construct their own lightsabers in this timeline, Leia choosing a blue blade like her father once carried, Luke creating a green-bladed weapon. Their training is intense, and their natural connection as twins amplifies their abilities. They can sense each other's thoughts and emotions, coordinate in battle with perfect synchronization, and their combined strength in the Force is formidable. Vader, meanwhile, is on his own journey. He's following the Emperor's orders to find his children, but he's also privately wrestling with everything he's learned. He meditates obsessively, reaching out through the Force, trying to sense Luke and Leia, trying to understand what he should do when he finds them. The dark side urges him to turn them, to bring them to Palpatine as powerful new apprentices. But there's something else, a quieter voice that sounds like Padme, like his mother, like the Jedi he used to be, asking him if this is really what he wants for his children. The Empire discovers the rebel base on Hoth, and Vader personally leads the assault. The Battle of Hoth unfolds brutally, with Imperial walkers advancing on Echo Base and rebel forces fighting desperately to buy time for an evacuation. Vader lands with the first wave of ground troops cutting through rebel soldiers as he searches for his children. He can sense them through the Force, two bright presences among the chaos of battle. Luke and Leia are fighting together, coordinating rebel defenses, using the Force to anticipate Imperial movements and save countless rebel lives. Finally, in the depths of Echo Base as the rebels evacuate, Vader confronts his children face to face for the first time. Luke and Leia stand together, lightsabers ignited, facing the Dark Lord who is their father. Vader deactivates his own lightsaber, and for a moment nobody moves. He looks at them, really looks at them, seeing Padme in their features, seeing himself in their eyes. He speaks, his voice rough with emotion, even filtered through the vocoder he rarely needs to use. He tells them he's their father. He tells them he never wanted this, that everything he did was to save their mother, that he's lost in darkness and doesn't know how to find his way back. Luke and Leia are stunned. They expected a battle, expected violence, not this confession from the monster who has hunted them. Leia, always more pragmatic, suspects a trap. She keeps her lightsaber ready, telling Vader that if he truly regrets what he's become, he should stop serving the Emperor and help the rebellion. But Vader explains it's not that simple. Palpatine is too powerful, too cunning. If Vader openly betrays him, the Emperor will destroy them all. He proposes something different. He'll continue to serve the Empire publicly, but he'll feed information to the rebellion through channels that can't be traced back to him. He'll sabotage operations subtly, buying them time to grow stronger. And when the moment is right, when they're ready, they'll face Palpatine together and end his reign. It's a tempting offer, but incredibly risky. Luke, idealistic and hopeful, wants to believe his father. Padme speaks first. She tells him she never stopped hoping he could find his way back. But she also never imagined it would be like this, with him still serving the Emperor while secretly helping their children. Vader removes his helmet, something he rarely does, revealing the face that's aged but unmarred by burns. His eyes, though still touched by the yellow of the dark side, hold a depth of pain and regret that takes Padme's breath away. He tells her everything, how the visions of her death consumed him, how Palpatine manipulated his fear, how he believed she died on Mustafar, how learning she and their children survived shattered everything he thought he knew. Anakin, because that's who he is when the helmet is off, asks Padme if there's any way back from what he's done. He's killed so many, destroyed so much. Can someone who has fallen so far ever be redeemed? Padme, tears streaming down her face, tells him she doesn't know. The Jedi might say yes, that redemption is always possible, but the weight of his actions is staggering. What she does know is that their children deserve to know their father is more than a monster. If he's truly committed to destroying Palpatine and ending the Empire's tyranny, then maybe, just maybe, there's a path forward. They talk for hours, sharing memories of who they used to be, discussing Luke and Leia, planning how to ultimately defeat the Emperor. Anakin explains that Palpatine's power in the dark side is immense, possibly greater than his own. Any direct confrontation would need to be carefully planned, with advantages in place, or the Emperor will simply destroy them all. He's been studying Palpatine for years, looking for weaknesses, and he's found some. The Emperor's overconfidence, his belief that Vader is completely under his control, these are exploitable. But they need time, they need the rebellion to grow stronger, and they need Luke and Leia to reach their full potential as Jedi. Before they part, Padme asks Anakin the question that's been haunting her. Why didn't he fight Obi-Wan on Mustafar? Why did he run? Anakin admits he doesn't fully know. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was some last shred of strategic thinking. Or maybe the Force itself was guiding him away from a confrontation that would have ended with him in the suit, broken and limited. Whatever the reason, that choice changed everything. It kept him powerful enough to potentially challenge Palpatine, but it also left him whole enough to feel the full weight of his guilt and regret. In a way, not having the physical pain of the suit has made the emotional pain more acute. He can't blame his actions on constant agony. He made his choices with a clear mind, and he has to live with them. As Vader returns to the Empire and Padme to the rebellion, both carry the burden of secrets and the fragile hope that maybe, somehow, this broken family can be made whole again. But Palpatine's suspicions continue to grow. He's noticed patterns in Imperial failures, coincidences that seem to benefit the rebellion too often. He doesn't yet know that Vader is the source, but he's narrowing down possibilities. The Emperor decides to test his apprentice's loyalty by assigning him a mission that Vader will find personally devastating. He's to lead an assault on a rebel cell that intelligence suggests is harboring high-value targets. What Palpatine doesn't tell Vader, but what the Emperor knows, is that Padme, Luke, and Leia are all at that location. Vader receives the orders and immediately realizes what's happening. Palpatine has discovered something, maybe not everything, but enough to set this trap. If Vader refuses the mission or warns the rebels, his betrayal is confirmed and Palpatine will move against him with full force. If he carries out the mission, he'll have to attack his own family or reveal himself by refusing at the last moment. It's a masterful manipulation, forcing Vader into a position where any choice exposes him. But Vader has been preparing for something like this. He's been building a network of Imperial officers who are disillusioned with the Empire, sympathetic to the rebellion, or simply loyal to him personally rather than to Palpatine. Vader accepts the mission and begins planning the assault, but he's secretly coordinating with his network and the rebellion simultaneously. He warns Padme, Luke, and Leia that they need to evacuate immediately, but they refuse. They realize this is the moment they've been preparing for. If they run, Palpatine will know something is wrong and will tighten his grip. If they stay and spring their own trap, they might be able to turn this situation against the Emperor. It's incredibly risky, but the rebellion has been growing, their fleet has been strengthening, and with Vader's help, they might be able to strike a decisive blow. The plan they devise is complex. Vader will lead the Imperial assault as ordered, but his forces will include the officers loyal to him. At a critical moment, these officers will turn on the rest of the Imperial forces, while Vader himself engages any Inquisitors or dark side adepts that Palpatine has sent to monitor him. Meanwhile, Luke and Leia will lead rebel forces in a counterattack, trapping the Imperial fleet. The goal is to not only survive Palpatine's trap, but to capture enough Imperial leadership to significantly damage the Empire's command structure. And if things go perfectly, to draw out the Emperor himself for a final confrontation. The day of the assault arrives, and Imperial Star Destroyers drop out of hyperspace around the rebel position. Vader is on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by crew who don't know what's about to happen. He gives the order to commence the attack, and TIE fighters launch toward the rebel base. But as the battle begins, key officers throughout the Imperial fleet execute their parts of the plan. Shield generators are subtly weakened, targeting computers are sabotaged, and communication channels are scrambled. The assault that should have been overwhelming becomes chaotic and disorganized. On the ground, Luke and Leia lead the rebel defense with Obi-Wan and Padme coordinating strategy. The twins fight side by side, their connection through the Force making them a devastating team. They can predict each other's movements perfectly, cover each other's weaknesses, and amplify each other's strengths. Imperial ground forces find themselves facing opponents who seem to know every move before they make it. The battle is fierce, but the rebels are holding their ground better than the Empire expected. Then Vader makes his move. He boards a shuttle with a squad of stormtroopers loyal to him and heads to the planet's surface, ostensibly to personally lead the ground assault. But once he's away from the main Imperial command, he turns on the Emperor's agents who are monitoring him. Imperial Inquisitors, darkside users trained to hunt Jedi and ensure loyalty, attack Vader, revealing that Palpatine knew about the betrayal all along. The duel is brutal. Vader faces 3 Inquisitors simultaneously, and even with his full power, it's a challenge. But he's been planning this for months, training specifically for this confrontation. He channels the dark side, but also something else. Something that feels like the light side he abandoned years ago. The conflict of these forces makes him stronger, more balanced than he's been since his fall. Vader defeats the Inquisitors, but the fight has alerted the entire Imperial fleet to his betrayal. Suddenly, the officers loyal to Vader are exposed, and the Imperial forces split into factions, some following orders to attack the rebels, others loyal to Vader and turning on their former comrades, and still others simply trying to survive the chaos. The space battle becomes a 3-way conflict, with rebel forces taking advantage of the confusion to strike at Imperial Star Destroyers that are now fighting each other, as much as the rebellion. Luke and Leia sense their father's struggle through the Force, and fight their way to his location. When they arrive, they find Vader surrounded by Imperial troops who are closing in, preparing to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. The twins ignite their lightsabers and leap into the fray, fighting alongside their father for the first time. The 3 of them together are unstoppable. Luke's raw power and optimism, Leia's strategic mind and precision, and Vader's experience and dark-side strength create a perfect combat unit. They carve through Imperial forces, protecting each other, moving in sync. In the midst of battle, something shifts in Vader, fighting alongside his children. Protecting them rather than trying to turn or destroy them feels right in a way nothing has felt right since Mustafar. The dark side has driven him for years, but now he feels the light side calling to him again, not as a rejection of who he's become, but as a balance to it. The Jedi forbade attachments, but his love for his children, his lingering love for Padme, maybe that's not the weakness the Jedi claimed it was. Maybe it's a strength that can coexist with the power he's gained from the dark side. But Palpatine has been watching everything unfold from Coruscant, and he's furious. His carefully laid trap has turned into a disaster, with his fleet in disarray and his apprentice openly rebelling. The Emperor decides that if he wants Vader and the Skywalker twins destroyed, he'll have to do it himself. He boards his personal shuttle with an escort of royal guards and the most powerful dark side adepts in his service, and he heads to the battle. When his shuttle arrives, the fighting pauses as both sides sense the overwhelming dark side presence that has just entered the system. Palpatine's shuttle lands, and the Emperor emerges, flanked by his guards. He looks at the carnage, at the Imperial forces that have turned against each other, at the rebels who have held their ground, and at Vader. The Emperor taunts them, telling Luke and Leia that they could have been so much more if they'd embraced the dark side, that they're wasting their potential clinging to the failed ideals of the Jedi. He offers them one final chance to join him, to rule the galaxy at his side or die with their father. The twins refuse, standing firm despite the pain, despite knowing they might not survive. And in that moment, Vader sees his children, sees their courage, their conviction, their refusal to give in to fear or hate. And something in him finally breaks free from the chains Palpatine forged. Anakin Skywalker rises to his feet, and for the first time since Mustafar, he fully embraces the light side of the Force. It doesn't erase the dark side power he's gained, doesn't undo his knowledge of Sith techniques, but it balances them. He becomes something the galaxy hasn't seen in thousands of years, a Force user who can wield both light and dark in harmony, drawing strength from both without being consumed by either. The Jedi called it balance, the Sith called it impossible, but Anakin, the Chosen One, finally achieves it. With this new balance, Anakin attacks Palpatine with everything he has. The duel between master and apprentice is cataclysmic. Force powers clash, lightsabers blur, and the ground cracks beneath their feet. Luke and Leia join the fight, 3 Skywalkers against the most powerful Sith Lord in history. Palpatine is still stronger than any of them individually, but together, balanced and united, they match him. The Emperor realizes with growing horror that he's made a critical error. By forcing this confrontation, by pushing Vader to the breaking point, he's created the very thing prophecy warned about, the Chosen One bringing balance to the Force. The battle rages for what feels like hours but is probably only minutes. Palpatine unleashes Force storms, trying to destroy them all, but the combined power of the Skywalkers holds the storms at bay. Luke and Leia create an opening, and Anakin takes it. He drives his lightsaber through Palpatine's chest, the red blade piercing the Emperor's heart. Palpatine's eyes widen in shock and disbelief. He never thought his carefully groomed apprentice, the tool he'd shaped and controlled for so long, could actually defeat him. As the Emperor dies, his body begins to dissolve, dark side energy dissipating into the Force. His reign of terror finally ended. The immediate aftermath of Palpatine's death is chaotic. Imperial forces, suddenly leaderless, fracture completely. Some surrender to the rebellion immediately. Others flee into the unknown regions to become the seeds of future Imperial remnants. And still others fight to the bitter end, unable to accept that the Empire is falling. The rebel fleet, bolstered by the Imperial officers who sided with Vader, secures the system. The battle is won, the Emperor is dead, but the cost has been high. Thousands died on both sides, and the galaxy is left reeling from the sudden power vacuum. Anakin collapses once the immediate danger passes. The effort of achieving balance, of fighting Palpatine, of channeling both light and dark side energy simultaneously, has pushed him beyond his limits. Luke and Leia catch him as he falls, supporting their father. Padme, who watched the final confrontation from the Rebel Command Center, rushes to their location. For the first time since Mustafar, the entire Skywalker family is together, alive, and on the same side. As Anakin recovers, the rebellion grapples with what comes next. The Empire is decapitated but not defeated. Star Destroyers still patrol systems across the galaxy. Imperial governors still hold power on countless worlds, and military installations remain operational. The Rebel Alliance needs to transition from a guerrilla resistance into a government capable of bringing order to the chaos. Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and other leaders begin forming what will become the New Republic, establishing a framework for democratic governance to replace imperial tyranny. But there's also the question of Anakin Skywalker. He's a hero who helped defeat the Emperor, but he's also Darth Vader, responsible for atrocities across the galaxy. Countless beings have suffered because of his actions. The rebellion is divided on what to do with him. Some call for trial and punishment, arguing that redemption doesn't erase accountability. Others, particularly those who fought alongside him in the final battle, believe he's earned a second chance. The debate threatens to fracture the alliance before it can consolidate its victory. Anakin himself doesn't argue for mercy. He knows what he's done, knows that nothing can truly make amends for the lives he destroyed. He tells the rebel leadership that he'll accept whatever judgment they decide, whether that's imprisonment, exile, or execution. All he asks is that Luke and Leia not be tainted by his crimes, that they be allowed to help build the new galaxy without their father's shadow hanging over them. Padme advocates for him, not to absolve him of guilt, but to argue that his knowledge of the Empire's systems, his understanding of Imperial military strategy, and his connections to officers who might be swayed to join the New Republic make him valuable to the transition. The compromise they reach is unprecedented. Anakin will not hold any official position in the New Republic government. He'll face a truth and reconciliation process where he testifies about his actions, providing transparency about the Empire's crimes and his role in them. He'll work to actively dismantle remaining Imperial forces, using his influence to convince officers and systems to stand down peacefully. And he'll spend the rest of his life trying to repair the damage he caused, knowing full well that it's an impossible task, but committed to trying anyway. Luke and Leia take very different paths after Palpatine's defeat. Luke, inspired by his father's redemption and his own training, decides to rebuild the Jedi Order. but he wants to do it differently than before. The old Jedi forbade attachments, suppressed emotions, and maintained a rigid code that ultimately contributed to their downfall. Luke envisions a new Jedi Order that acknowledges emotions, allows for families, and seeks balance rather than pure light. He travels the galaxy searching for Force-sensitive individuals, gathering ancient Jedi texts, and establishing a temple where a new generation can learn without the dogma that failed the old order. Leia, meanwhile, embraces her political heritage. Trained by her mother in diplomacy and governance, tested by years of rebellion, she becomes one of the key architects of the New Republic. She works alongside Mon Mothma to establish the new government, negotiating with former Imperial worlds, building alliances, and creating a democratic system with safeguards against the kind of centralized power that allowed Palpatine to rise. Her Force sensitivity gives her unique insights into people's intentions and helps her navigate the complex political landscape. But she never formally trains as a Jedi, choosing to serve the galaxy through leadership rather than mysticism. Padme, finally able to operate openly after years in hiding, becomes a senior advisor to the New Republic. Her experience as Queen of Naboo and Senator gives her unparalleled expertise in governance, and her moral authority as someone who opposed Palpatine from the beginning makes her voice carry weight. She works tirelessly to establish institutions that will prevent another empire from rising, pushing for term limits, checks on executive power, and protections for individual rights. But she also makes time for her family, for the quiet moments with Anakin, Luke, and Leia that were stolen from them for so many years. Anakin's redemption is a long, painful process. He travels to worlds he helped subjugate, meeting with survivors of Imperial atrocities, offering what help he can while acknowledging that nothing he does will be enough. Some reject him with understandable hatred. Others, seeing his genuine remorse and his efforts to make amends, offer cautious forgiveness. He works with Luke to develop training techniques that incorporate lessons from both Jedi and Sith traditions, creating a more balanced approach to the Force. And he supports Leia's political work from the shadows, providing intelligence about Imperial remnants and advice on military matters. The galaxy's transition from Empire to New Republic takes years and is far from smooth. Imperial warlords carve out territories in the Outer Rim, refusing to accept defeat. Entire sectors resist the New Republic, either out of loyalty to the Empire or fear of the unknown. The economy is in shambles after decades of exploitation and militarization. Billions of beings need aid, resettlement, and justice, but slowly, painfully, progress is made. Systems join the New Republic. Democratic institutions take root. The military-industrial complex begins to convert to peaceful production. Luke's new Jedi Order grows slowly but steadily. His students are different from the old Jedi, more human, more connected to the world around them. They're allowed to have families, to feel emotions, to acknowledge their struggles with darkness. Luke teaches them that the dark side isn't something to be feared and suppressed, but understood and balanced. It's a controversial approach, and many who remember the old order criticize it as dangerous. But Luke points to his father as evidence that balance is possible, that someone who fell completely to darkness can find light again, and that the rigid purity of the old Jedi was part of what made them vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulation. Years pass, and the Skywalker family becomes a symbol of redemption and hope for the galaxy. Luke's Jedi Order produces a new generation of Force users who are wiser and more balanced than their predecessors. Leia's leadership. The twins eventually have their own families. Luke marries and has a son, Ben, named for Obi-Wan. Leia marries Han Solo, the smuggler who became a hero of the rebellion, and they have children who inherit both the Skywalker power and the Solo charm. Anakin gets to be a grandfather, teaching his grandchildren about the Force, warning them about the dangers of pride and fear, telling them stories about their grandmother Padme and the Republic she fought for. It's a quiet redemption, domestic and small, but meaningful in ways that galactic heroics never were. But not everything is perfect. The dark side still exists, and there are always those who seek power through it. Imperial remnants continue to plague the New Republic, staging attacks and trying to the government. New threats emerge from the unknown regions. Ancient Sith artifacts are discovered, and dark side cults arise on forgotten worlds. The Skywalkers find themselves repeatedly called upon to defend the galaxy they helped liberate, each generation taking up the burden of protecting peace. Obi-Wan Kenobi. who survived long enough to see Anakin's redemption and Luke's Jedi Order take root, passes away peacefully, becoming one with the Force. His last words to Anakin are forgiveness and pride, telling his former apprentice that he finally fulfilled his potential, that he brought balance to the Force as the prophecy foretold. Anakin, old now and marked by the weight of his choices, takes comfort in those words but never fully forgives himself. Some wounds, he knows, never heal completely, and perhaps they shouldn't. The memory of what he did as Vader keeps him humble, keeps him dedicated to making amends. In this alternate timeline, the galaxy is better off in many ways than in the original. Palpatine was defeated years earlier, countless lives were saved from the Empire's continued oppression, and the Skywalker family stayed together. But the cost was still high, and the scars of the Clone Wars and the Empire's reign take generations to heal. The New Republic faces constant challenges, and the Jedi Order must prove itself worthy of trust after the old Order's failures. Democracy is fragile, peace is temporary, and vigilance is eternal. Luke, now a Jedi Master leading an order that's both new and ancient, reflects on his father's journey. Anakin fell further into darkness than almost anyone in history, but he also climbed back out, proving that redemption is possible even from the deepest pit. That lesson becomes central to Luke's teaching. He tells his students about his father honestly, not sugarcoating the horrors of Darth Vader's reign, but also showing that someone who made terrible choices can still choose differently, can still become a force for good. Leia, speaking at a ceremony commemorating the end of the Empire and the founding of the New Republic, addresses the galaxy. She talks about her father, about how Anakin Skywalker's fall and redemption taught them that people are complex, that heroes can become villains and villains can become heroes, that must be balanced with mercy and accountability with forgiveness. She argues that the New Republic must be built on these principles, that a government that can't acknowledge its own capacity for darkness and actively guard against it will inevitably repeat the Empire's mistakes. Padme, in her later years, writes extensively about her experiences, producing memoirs that become essential reading for students of history and politics. She's unflinchingly honest about her relationship with Anakin, about the warning signs she missed or chose to ignore, about the complexity of loving someone who becomes a monster. But she also writes about hope, about how her children and the man Anakin ultimately became prove that people are not defined by their worst moments, that change is possible, that the arc of history can bend toward justice even when it seems impossible. Anakin himself rarely speaks publicly. He's given his testimony, shared what he knows, done what he can to help. Now he focuses on small acts of service, teaching younglings at Luke's Academy, helping rebuild communities destroyed by the Empire, meditating on the Force and the balance he finally achieved. When he does speak, usually to his grandchildren or to Luke's students, he emphasizes the dangers of fear and anger, how they can corrupt even good intentions, how the path to darkness is paved with choices that seem reasonable at the time. The question that historians and Force scholars debate is whether this timeline is truly better than the original. In the original timeline, Anakin's fall was complete. His imprisonment in the suit was total, but his eventual redemption in saving Luke from Palpatine was unambiguous. In this timeline, Anakin's redemption is more gradual, more complicated, achieved through years of work rather than a single heroic moment. There's no clean narrative of complete fall, followed by complete redemption. Instead, there's a messy human story of someone trying to climb out of darkness while still carrying its weight. But perhaps that's more realistic, more instructive for a galaxy trying to heal from tyranny. The Empire didn't arise from nowhere. Millions of beings made choices, small and large, that enabled Palpatine's rise. And defeating the Empire required millions of beings to make different choices, to resist, to fight back, to build something new. Anakin's journey in this timeline mirrors the galaxy's journey, a slow, painful process of confronting what was done and trying to do better. As the years turn into decades, the acute crisis of the post-Empire era fades into the ongoing work of governance and progress. The New Republic faces new challenges, corruption creeping in, factions forming, the eternal human tendency toward conflict and inequality reasserting itself. But the institutions hold, the democracy persists, and each generation recommits to the ideals that the rebellion fought for. The Skywalker family remains at the center of galactic events, not because they seek power, but because their commitment to service and their extraordinary abilities in the Force make them natural leaders and protectors. Luke's Jedi Order, decades after its founding, is firmly established. His students have become masters themselves, spreading across the galaxy, serving as mediators, peacekeepers, and spiritual guides. The Order's approach to balance, its acceptance of emotion and attachment, has proven successful. There are fewer dramatic falls to the dark side because students aren't taught to suppress and fear their darker impulses, but to understand and integrate them. The Jedi are more connected to the communities they serve, less isolated and aloof than the old order, and therefore more trusted and effective. Political career spans decades, holding various positions in the New Republic government and eventually serving as chief of state. Her leadership is marked by pragmatism, balanced with idealism, a willingness to compromise on tactics while never compromising on core principles. The government she helps build isn't perfect. It's messy and slow and frustrating in all the ways democracies are, but it's responsive to people's needs and resistant to authoritarian backsliding. When she eventually steps down, it's to a successor chosen through legitimate democratic processes. A peaceful transition of power that would have been unimaginable under the Empire, Han Solo, who in this timeline never had to rescue Leia from, because that whole chain of events played out differently, becomes a respected military leader and eventually settles into semi-retirement, running shipping and logistics for the New Republic while occasionally going on adventures with Chewbacca when civilian life gets too boring. His relationship with Leia is tempestuous but solid, two strong-willed people who challenge and support each other. Their children grow up with stories of their grandfather's redemption and their parents' heroism, facing the challenge of living up to an extraordinary legacy. As the decades pass and the original generation begins to age, there's a concerted effort to ensure that the lessons they learned aren't forgotten. The New Republic establishes museums, archives, and educational programs dedicated to remembering both the horrors of the Empire and the heroism of the rebellion. Anakin's testimony, given in the early years after Palpatine's fall, is preserved and taught. A cautionary tale about how fear and desire for power can corrupt even the most talented and well-intentioned individuals. Anakin Skywalker dies in his sleep, an old man surrounded by his family, at peace in a way he never was during his years as Vader. His passing is marked throughout the galaxy, with ceremonies remembering both his crimes and his redemption, acknowledging the complexity of his legacy. Luke and Leia, now middle-aged themselves and leaders in their respective fields, speak at his funeral about the lessons their father taught them, about the possibility of redemption and the importance of balance. His body is cremated in the Jedi tradition, and his presence in the Force remains, a guide for future generations. The galaxy that emerges from this alternate history is one where second chances are possible but not guaranteed, where family and connection are sources of strength rather than weakness, where balance is seen as the ideal rather than absolute adherence to either light or dark. It's a galaxy that learned its lessons the hard way, but actually learned them, building institutions and cultures that guard against the mistakes of the past, while remaining open to growth and change in the future. And in the end, isn't that what the Star Wars saga has always been about? The struggle between light and dark, the importance of choice, the possibility of redemption, and the power of family and friendship to overcome even the greatest evil. This alternate timeline, born from Anakin's decision to flee Mustafar rather than face his former master, explores these themes in a different way, but arrives at similar truths. The Force seeks balance, love is worth fighting for, and no one is beyond redemption if they're willing to do the hard work of changing. Thank you for joining me on this journey through an alternate Star Wars timeline. If you enjoyed this exploration of what might have been, let me know in the comments what other alternate scenarios you'd like to see explored. What if Qui-Gon Jinn survived? What if Padme didn't die? What if Luke joined Vader on Bespin? The possibilities are endless, and each one offers new insights into the galaxy far, far away that we all love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and may the Force be with you always.